Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to my house. As you can see, I've prepared a little bit of lighting to get a bit of stage feeling for today's session. My name is Julian. Today we'll be talking about driving personalization in the age of privacy, of data privacy to be specific. Before we jump into the topic, a little bit of background information to myself. So I'm a director of product at Tealium. I joined Tealium around January this year. Before that, I was responsible at Lufthansa Group for the harmonization of web analytics data and also the data privacy framework that we implemented over there for 3 different companies, Lufthansa, Swiss, and Austrian Airlines. So I have quite some experience around the data privacy topics, content management implementation, and everything that comes with it. So let's strictly jump into it. Before we go into the Tealium's product landscape, let's talk a bit about data and why data privacy by itself is so relevant nowadays. So data privacy currently is expected to be the next great differentiator for your brands. What that means is pretty simple. We see big brands as Apple, Facebook, Google use data privacy for advertisement. Apple recently used data privacy to actually sell their own phones. We see that 30 minutes advertisement using data privacy, generating trust for the customers so that they start to understand why the phone should be bought and using data privacy as itself. So a bit of data on that one in order to just understand the market and how customers feel around that. We've used a report by Braze from February 2020, where you ask customer, we've been asked some data privacy questions. And as you can see right here, 75% of those users being asked in those reports actually have stopped to engage with companies out of concern of data privacy and how personal data is being used in those. So just to understand and to simplify that specific fact, if you are considered in those 75%, you will lose customers because of data privacy. And that's a really important fact. If you take a look right here, these are also some other statistics that they shared with us, is that 82% of US consumers that we asked actually consider data privacy to be very important for them. The next one right here is one that triggers me a bit because only 28% of marketing execs consider data privacy as very important. And as you can see right there, there's a gap in between. We see customers actually caring for their data. And at the same side, we see marketing executives and brands in general to handle data privacy not with the same relevance. So in my experience, marketeers often see data privacy as a necessary evil. It's something that they see as a big wall. Since GDPR, companies are losing data, they do not get the opt-in rates, and what they do is they try to crush through that wall. At the end of the day, it may be possible for you to crush through it, but a big fine is waiting on the other side. So crushing through that wall is not the solution to it. So we talked today a bit about how Tealium can help you to overpass that and surpass that wall and start using data privacy for you benefits. So in order to jump into it, give you a bit of overview what data privacy means globally also, the evolution that we're going through. So since GDPR was introduced in May 2018, a lot has happened in that market. We see that nowadays also CCPA will be enforced in July. I hope you already know about that one. But it's not only GDPR and CCPA. Since GDPR was introduced, GDPR has been used as a template for all the other countries trying to get into the same level of data protection, as you can see right here. We see, for example, Thailand, New Zealand, Egypt, Brazil, Japan, South Korea, all of those countries actually trying to get to the same level of data protection as the Europeans. So this is something that you all should have in mind, that data privacy is not something that's going to go away. It's something that's here to stay, and that will be far bigger than we know it as of now. So for all of you that know about CCPA, you know the details around that one. We'll not jump into the legal kind of requirements and descriptions around that one, but important to understand is that CCPA by itself was introduced and is in effect since January 1st of this year, and will be enforced in July 1st. For those companies out there, and for you as team members, it's important to understand that even if your company is not based in California, it can also be relevant for you. So go back to your legal teams, check with them, and see if CCPA also applies to you. If it does, stay tight. We have the right solutions for that also to help you to be compliant also with CCPA. So all of that in that overview, it may sound overwhelming, and honestly, it does. I consider myself an expert in data privacy field, but at the end of the day, each and every day, I have to read through thousands of documents. I have to go through hours of research in order to even understand the details of that. We all know that that's impossible for a single person. So as soon as you have that feeling that you're overwhelmed by it, just have one thing in mind. You're not the only one trying to figure this out. You have a whole legal team that has been working for years on those topics. It's not new to them to read legal texts and start to interpret them and start to get an understanding of that. So instead of just create that fear or get that overwhelming feeling, step back a bit, talk to those teams, and do not see data privacy as a necessary evil. Start to see it as a necessary opportunity that you try to create within your company and within your brand. With all those said, and the details around data privacy by itself, the big question is, where do I start? What do I do? And we narrowed it down to 3 simple steps. First one being people. The second one, the process that you have to create. And the third one being technology. So if we take a look on this slide right here, you can see that all those 3 topics need to happen in conjunction. They're all connected to each other. Technology can be used as an enabler, but it will not mysteriously fix everything that you have. Like it's not possible. You all know you can implement a nice tool, good tool for specific purposes, but you still need people and processes in order to make it happen. So let's review a few key points around each of these points. Let's just start with people. Honestly, for me personally, this is the most important one. In all those years that I've been working with data, with analytics, with data privacy and everything connected to it, it always comes down to people. What I mean with it is, we all know that we have those legal teams in our company, tech teams, marketing teams, and also analytics teams. We're used to work in those communication silos because before GDPR and before data privacy was a big topic, there was never the necessity to actually do a knowledge exchange with legal. You just shared some information when you wanted to implement a new tool, when you needed some information around contracts, and that was it. Now legal actually is sitting in the driving seat. So it's important to understand that you have to break those boundaries and you have to get these people together and those teams together to start to understand how data privacy affects your company. You know, I will share also a story of mine. So when I was working with Lufthansa, way in the beginning when we tried to be GDPR compliant, we had that major problem. Legal was giving us requirements, and I, on the other side, was receiving those requirements, and I barely understood them. It was like, okay, we have to implement the consent manager. There's no new regulations out. Fine, I'll do it, no problem. So legal gave me those requirements. I went down, sit on my computer, and implemented with Tealium a consent manager on the websites. Back in those days, I never would have expected that implementing a consent manager would affect marketing teams and analysts. I never thought about that one. I just implemented it and that was it. I was done. I was finished with it. It was a task on top of my daily business. It was never mentioned for me to be in such a role to be responsible for data privacy back in the days. So I did that, waited for weeks and weeks and weeks, and nothing happened until marketing reached out to me. And actually they reached out to me with a big problem because they couldn't activate the campaigns anymore. They weren't receiving any kind of data anymore. People were opting out. And we never knew about that one. It just catched us by surprise. So that's when the idea came into my mind where I said like, okay, this is happening for a specific reason. We have to do this implementation. There's a legal requirement right now, but we're behaving the same way. We're not adapting these new circumstances in order to surpass the problems that we have. So what I did was pretty simple. I just called everybody, called from legal, called tech people, called marketing, and called analysts, brought everybody into the same room, and for a couple of weeks, we just did knowledge exchange. We let legal explain what GDPR means. We tried to figure out how it affects marketing, what do we have to do, all those details, and we actually gathered a task force around that in order to surpass our problems and to use data privacy as a benefit and not see it as an obstacle. So that's why people and communication silos, in order to break those down, is so important for data privacy by itself. So this was people. Now we're talking about process. Let's just say you figure it out, you have a team working on data privacy, that's fine. But when we talk about data privacy, we often also talk about trust. Trust that users have to have so that they can freely share their data, their personal information with your brand. But trust is not something that is solely used for marketing purposes. Trust starts within your company. So in order to create that trust, and what kind of data are we collecting? What are we doing? What kind of tools do we have? And all those nitty-gritty details, you need processes in place. You need transparency within your company so that all you people internally understand where data is flowing through. What are we even doing with it? Do we need it? Is it necessary enough? For what kind of purpose do we need it? All those details only can be solved if you start creating processes around it so it's clear and transparent internally first, so that you can start create that trust relationship with the users using your services, websites, applications, or whatever you need on those platforms. But this is where it starts. So it's people and processes by itself. When we talk about technology, technology by itself is a useful tool at the end of the day. We all need it in order to do analytics, in order to track data. Everything what we need in order to activate those marketing campaigns at the end of the day is technology. We're living in a digital world. So why is it so important? Why are we emphasizing it? For data privacy, there's one big rule that I take really personal, and that is keep it simple. I've seen it over the years, different customers, different brands, that technology is being implemented without having the perfect overview about what it's needed in your company. What that means is actually pretty simple. For example, you need an analytics tool. You have to take a look internally if an analytics tool already exists. Maybe a different department is already using one. You don't need a fifth one. You don't need a 10th dashboarding tool. You don't need that. In regards to data privacy, you always have to keep it simple in order to have a good overview, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to explain that to your users, a person that never heard about an analytics tool. They don't even know about what it is. How do you want to explain 5 different ones and explain to them that 5 different ones, 5 different companies need your personal data to achieve the same goal? It doesn't make sense. So always focus on what kind of technology you need and be simple about that one. Have an overview and try to understand what your company actually really needs and try to clean that one up. So if you don't do that, and if you don't have that overview, it may be also overwhelming, not in regards to data privacy, but also in the technology that you have implemented. As mentioned before, all those technologies that you implement, all those different tools, at the end of the day are siloed down if you do not have a data supply chain in place. You can see it right here on this slide that you have all those different platforms and data sources flowing into different tools. For example, CRM system, analytics tools, marketing automation, social or data warehousing by itself. And just by the way, all of those tools that I mentioned right there, all of the categories of tools, there can be multiple vendors behind all of that. Just imagine that horrific task of explaining legal, even your customers at the end of the day, all of those tools and all of those nitty-gritty detail that you have to do to fulfill legal requirements and data privacy requirements at the end of the day. So if you do not focus down on your data supply chain, you will encounter major risk. You will collect too much data. Data is being sent to tools where you never know if you're actually needed or not, if contracts are in place, it will get chaotic. If a customer at the end of the day wants to delete his personal data that you're collecting on him or her, you will have a big problem, because now you have to go to each of those data silos that you created specifically and try to delete it. That will be a really horrific task. You don't want to be in that spot. Also, if we're talking, for example, about data access, you have to be able to provide your own customers access to their own data that you have been collecting for a certain amount of time. So if you do not have data supply chain in place, how do you want to do that? Even if you have just 10 tools implemented, that will be a big task. 10 tools, 5 different departments, it gets really chaotic pretty quick. And I suppose you know exactly what I mean with that. We all start at the same place. Also, overreact and didn't collect anything. It's like that part where you, as soon as you have all those tools, and big brands have like 50 different tools, 100 different platforms, profiles and all of that, it's not possible anymore to be that chaotic in times where data privacy is so important to customers by itself, and when you're encountering major risk of getting a fine. So What do you do? What do you need? At the end of the day, you need a data supply chain for data privacy governance. So this presentation is focused on data privacy. So I will explain to you in simple steps how a data supply chain should look like in your company. So this right here is an overview how we at Tealium present the data privacy specific data supply chain. So you have collection at the first step. You have different platforms, different data sources where you're collecting data, always based on consent. That's that little log over there. So every time you collect data, consent should always be part of it. In regards of CCPA, it's not actually consent. This, by the way, just called an opt-out. But go back to the legal teams, they will explain it in detail. So as soon as you've collected that, you need standardization so that the data at the end of the day speaks the same language, so you can transform and enrich it. As soon as you've transformed and enriched it, you start gathering insights about data by itself. Remember, consent first. So you have to know, are you allowed to do that or not? And as soon as you have done that, you can start integrating it and activating that data in order to share it with third parties. So instead of having these data silos, you create a data supply chain. Now you know that you have the overview, what's being collected, what are you doing with that data, and with whom are you sharing it with. This overview right here may sound a bit too much for those people that aren't familiar with it. That's why we broke it down to 3 key steps in it. So we have data and consent collection. That's the first step. Then we have audience creation, where you actually create your insights. As soon as you've done that, we have the activation part. So what does that mean? Let's focus on data and consent collection first. So we at Tealium offer tag management platform. Tag management, tags, by the way, are used in order to actually make data accessible. So you collect data, you need tags for it, you should be familiar with it. And our approach to that one is where tags are being used, you need a consent manager. So we have a built-in consent manager built in as a feature that comes with our tag management platform. So soon as you have to collect data and GDPR applies to you, you can use our GDPR flow in order to implement the consent manager. And by the way, we are also releasing in the next weeks a CCPA specific flow. So for all those companies where CCPA applies, you can also use a consent manager and use it for do not sell my data and opting out and all those nitty-gritty details and requirements that you have specifically for CCPA. So that's the collection part. But as soon as I've collected data, now comes the part where I have to give it a bit of structure. So it's not enough to just know if you're allowed to do certain campaigns or if you're allowed to do personalization by itself or not. You have to actually create that structure. And what we at Tealium believe in is as soon as you create so-called events being, for example, in the data privacy space, different categorization that you give your consent could be, each one of those could be an event. You could go more granular into it and say each specific vendor would have its own event. So now you're breaking all this knowledge down into small chunks. Why is this necessary? It's actually pretty simple, because data collection is just the first step. We have to gather insights and create audiences for data privacy too. So it's not only a marketing step that you have to take or something that is important for analytical people. You need it in order to fulfill all your data privacy requirements and to build trust with the customers. Because as soon as you've created events, the next step would be that you gain insights, creating audiences. All your marketeers out there should already be familiar with segmentation and creating audiences. For those of you who do not know what it is, it's actually pretty simple. You have the whole pie. These are all your visitors. Now you slice down just a piece of that pie, and that little piece is, for example, the customers that opted into a marketing category. So you're allowed to do marketing use cases, campaigns, or advertisement even. So now you know that this specific piece of your pie has a certain level of allowance so that you can collect data and share it with third parties and everything that's connected to it. It may sound simple, but at the end of the day, these are the insights that you need in order to do personalization within the data privacy world. And why, you will see that in a second. So the third step, as soon as you've gathered those insights, you need to activate the data. So it's not enough to only collect it within your own company. You want to share it also with all your vendors and all the tools that you have implemented within your brand, within your company, because now the real use cases start. So what we do at Tealium, what we offer you is this little overview, this screenshot right here that legal people will love. For all your marketeers out there, they're always struggling with the legal teams because it's difficult to explain to them where data is flowing to. What kind of data is flowing through? Why are we even doing that? Just explain me 10 different tools. We all know about that one. And I was in that spot too. It's difficult to do that, and it's exhausting to go over and over again. So as soon as you have taken the 2 steps that I just explained right a second before, so we have the data collection, we have the content, we have audiences, we have insights. Now you can use event stream and our connectors in order to connect the data that you have been tracking with third parties. What that means, simplify it. I will simplify it even more for you. If you have a category, for example, analytics, now you want to share your analytical data, all the events that you've collected about user. For example, with Google Analytics, you can use a connector that connects only to that specific part of your or segment of your customers or visitors, by the way, that actually allow you to do that. And all of this happens in real time. So as soon as you set it up once, it's an automated process. Just this screenshot right here, show it to your legal teams. This is exactly what they need. They need overview, they need clarity. They need to understand what are we doing in order to fulfill all those purposes and requirements and everything what we have, so that all of the data that we collect always respects the consents and the settings of our customers. This is why you need our supply chain actually in order to fulfill all of that and to surpass that wall that I mentioned in the beginning. So people that are familiar with Tealium, they may already know parts of this. They're familiar with the product by itself. So what we've done, we have created this use case right here. It's just an example to show all of those people that never have seen about the Tealium platform by itself and how does it work, in order to let you also understand what possibilities you have. So we're not talking about the technology part right now over here. We're talking about a specific user on your website. In this example, we've used Amanda. This is just a mock-up. I don't even know if she's called Amanda or not, but we just call it Amanda. So Amanda has visited our website and she's provided us consent with a full opt-in to all of the categorizations that we have. We've been tracking data on Amanda for quite some time. We know that Amanda is a high-value customer. She's bought multiple products. She spent a lot of money on our website. She's a VIP on our website. We know all of that. Through our data supply chain, we've gathered those insights and combine it with constants. What now happens is, just imagine Amanda has seen a Reddit post, has read some news around data privacy. She's not scared to share her data. She just wants to block all of that. So she visits back our website and she fully opts out. So before she opted out, we knew she's Amanda, high-value customer. We know what she's bought. We know all those details around her for her own benefit at the end of the day. With the opt-out, what happens? We don't know her anymore. She's lost. You can't get her back. It's difficult to get her back. You will only get her back if cookies are being deleted and all this technical stuff happens and magically she provides a full opt-in again. But then again, through that time, she's lost. And this could happen to millions of your visitors. And that's not good. That's the part where marketing teams get scared. What do we do with it? So we have right here a mock-up of a website. This is not a real one, just an example. This is a mock-up of a possible content management implementation. And this right here is interaction that Amanda did. So you can see the categories that you can choose from and say, okay, analytics, do I want it? Yes, no. Marketing, do I want it? Yes, no. And personalization, do I want it? Yes, no. Let's just say she opts out, as I mentioned at the beginning. Now she clicks on Save Settings. What normally would happen in the behavior of all the content management out there that I implemented is this right here. It just goes away. The customer knows nothing about it. The customer doesn't know what even happens with their data. What are they losing? Nothing at all. Just remember, our data supply chain is in real time. So if you have the data supply chain implemented and ready, as I just explained to you in a couple of slides, you go through that, you would have the insights right there and you could act directly in this step. So before Amanda opts out, you know she's a high value customer. So you're not bothering her by showing just a small message. This right here is just an example. It doesn't look perfectly, doesn't look nice. The reason I did that, this right here needs to be customized by your own brand. We give you full customization on that one. The important step that I want to give you is, or the important thing, important use case right here is, the customer that has been lost before can now be informed about what's happening before it happens. Before we lose the knowledge on Amanda, before she loses all those benefits, the customized sales, the login functionalities, remember me, whatever you consider in those categorizations that you have, explain it right there. Give the user the chance to select from benefits, not descriptions around tools and everything. I know it's a requirement to explain everything what you do, but starts to see the benefits that you create on the website, and not only for yourself as a brand, as a company, the benefits that you create with data for your customers and users at the end of the day. This is nothing else as we've seen it with Netflix, Amazon, and all those big platforms. Everybody knows Netflix is using data. Why are they using data? They're giving me recommendations. They're showing me series and TV shows that I might like, and at the end of the day, we had all been there. You like them. Most of them, you like them. You understand it. There's a benefit behind all of that. You're freely sharing the data, no problem at all. Why? I want that benefit. Do I want to lose it? No, I don't. That's a pretty simple one. But for a lot of websites, it's difficult to explain that, but that's the real task. And we give you the opportunity to react in real time with those customers. And this is just a small use case at the end of the day. This is how you use data privacy as a benefit and not as an obstacle. It's not a necessary evil at the end of the day. It's a necessary benefit for your brands. So if you do not focus on these specific topics that I just mentioned, you're going to lose to the evolution of the market. Definitely, period. You have to focus down on these topics. And Tealium is here to help you with it. So just to quickly summarize it, to give you the key benefits, through the data supply chain, you collect content, you collect data, you add context to it, you get a customer level view of privacy preferences, so the content level, the opt-outs, and everything that's coming with all the regulations in the next years, you create insights about those visitors on your website. As soon as you've done that, you activate, also press audiences or your events based on consent. Consent first, data privacy first. As soon as you've done that, you've created an automated data privacy, data supply chain for yourself. Easy as that, creating all the views, solving your problems, and you know exactly what you have to explain to your customers. No chaos anymore. Thank you for listening to my session. I'm Julian Llorente, and have a nice day.